Hello, this is Heather Regan Addis from Beachcomber Meditation, and I'm here with my beautiful daughter Jennifer Addis for this episode of the podcast where Jenny's going to talk a little bit about her community archaeology projects. But first of all, would you like to introduce yourself, Jen?
So I'm Jenny Addis of Addis Archaeology, and I am a freelance archaeologist.
So, can you tell me a bit about the community work that you've been doing?
So I suppose I've got a few projects on the go. One of them is in the North Pennines, and that is all about preserving and reconnecting people to the industrial lead mining heritage in the area. And it's quite like an out of the way place, so there's not an awful lot going on over there. It's quite an isolated community, I think. And it's really nice because actually a lot of sites have been really well preserved and I think even listed off the back of this project. So that's been really cool. What else have I been doing? I've just finished a community dig in Nelson, the Burnley and Nelson Big Dig. And on that, I was working with sixth formers from the local college. So that was a week with the A-level students and a week with the, what did they call them? The SEND students. That's what they called them. Maybe they called them START. Anyway, just teaching them how to do archaeology and getting them excited about it and getting them kind of feeling quite confident and engaged with their heritage and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that I do really with my community projects.
And say with the Land of Lead and Silver in the North Pennines, how do you actually go about engaging the community?
So, and this is something that we kind of have, like I've done a few projects. They tend to be funded by the National Lottery. You wouldn't believe how the National Lottery is holding our heritage together. We did a project in Orkney last year, and it's very similar to the North Pennines in the sense that it's these very isolated communities, and I think people, when archaeologists and specialists come into their communities and start talking about their heritage, people can often be very put off because they're used to specialists coming in and taking a lot of credit for their heritage and kind of telling people, I'm the specialist and this is your story. And it's really important, and it puts people off, right? It makes people uncomfortable. It makes locals uncomfortable, and it's really been important to me that the locals know, from the get-go, that that's not what we're doing and that's not what we're like. And actually, we want to listen to their stories. We want to listen to what they have to say, because the only reason we're doing this is for them, for their heritage, and to preserve it and to connect them to it. And so always we go in and make it really clear that we're there to listen and learn from them. And also with volunteers to ask them, what do you want to get out of this? What are your goals? And how, we're here to help you. We're here to enable you to develop these skills so that when we're gone, you can continue doing the amazing work that you're doing. So yeah, I suppose that's the main thing that we do with that.
And when you've been speaking to people, say in Orkney or in the North Pennines, what are some of the really interesting stories that you've heard from people about maybe about their grandparents or great grandparents?
I mean, the stories in Orkney, I could go on forever about them because it was such a fascinating project. It was with the John Ray Society, and we were looking into John Ray, which, if people listening haven't heard of John Ray, Google him. He's such a cool guy. He's an explorer who was going over in the 19th century to Canada from Orkney, because loads of Orcadians went to Canada. This is what the whole project was about. Anyway, so there's loads of really beautiful stories about people in Orkney who have relatives who are Indigenous Métis Canadians. And there was just loads of really beautiful stories about people going over to Canada and people coming from Canada to Orkney to reconnect with their family, and people from Orkney going over to reservations in Canada and meeting their long lost cousins and stuff like that. And there was one family who were given their treaty money and stuff like that, and it was just really, really lovely stories for the most part. Obviously, there was kind of a darker side to it with what happened to the Indigenous people and the way that that we treated them when Canada was colonized, but also a lot of like lovely stories as well. And the same for the North Pennines, really. Like, you know, lead mining wasn't an easy thing to do, and living in that landscape wasn't an easy thing to do because you can't really farm an awful lot, and you can't rely 100% on lead mining, and you can't rely 100% on farming. So there was a lot of minor farmers, and that's a lot of people's heritage and where a lot of people come from.
Yeah. And what does your experience working on these community archaeology projects, what have you learned from them about the human condition?
That's a really good question. What have I learned about the human condition? I think the reason people are there isn't necessarily like people get so excited about archaeology always. That's like the main thing as an archaeologist. You tell someone that you're an archaeologist, and they're like, "Oh my god!" But actually, I think people are more there to connect with each other, whether or not they go to connect. I think they come for the archaeology, but they stay for each other, because you get people that come out, and there's a lot of like neurodiverse people that come to these things, on every project really. And you get people that come out for the archaeology and then actually meet people that have a lot in common with them, and then over the course of a community excavation or like a community survey or whatever, people really come out of their skin and come out and, you know, connect with each other and start having a laugh and having a really good time. And it's a really good way to build community over something that you share with people. So that's been really nice. And I think like especially in places like Orkney, we were doing a lot of oral histories. And I think people just want to be listened to. And I think that's one of the things that, again, saying like we go into these communities and we want to hear their stories. Like people want to be listened to, and they want, you know, they want to tell you about their heritage. They want to tell you about their history and want to feel like they've been heard. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
But archaeology is used a lot for like people with trauma and people who are neurodiverse and stuff like that to like help, because it's very calming and it's very therapeutic actually. And do you know what, that's what some of the students were saying this month when they were digging. They were like, actually this is really therapeutic to do.
So obviously we've talked a lot about mindfulness in archaeology. So could you say something about that, like, you know, being present in the natural environment, spending time sort of painstakingly, you know, digging a feature, and how that keeps you present? What can you say a little bit more about what that's like?
Yeah, well, this is it, right? Because you're outside, which is amazing. It's amazing to work outside, or like I work outside every day, whether or not I'm doing a community project, and it's amazing. And you're like connected with the seasons as the seasons are passing, and you're connected with like the weather. You're looking at the sky and you're like, what's going to happen next? And sometimes it is really methodical and it's slow and careful. And you have to really think about what you're doing. You have to be 100% present, thinking about the stratigraphy and the different colours in the soil and different textures and what you're finding and how you're going to dig it out and stuff like that. You have to be really present for it. And that's like a really wonderful thing that I think is really underappreciated about archaeology. And that is another thing that really helps people. You know, the studies about like veterans doing archaeology, for example, and the studies about how it can really improve people's mental health to do that. And I think a lot of that is rooted in community, but then also being in touch with nature and being in what is almost a flow state. Because when you're really concentrating and really working on a feature, it is kind of a flow state of just doing it, you know.
And is there something about having your hands in the soil that's kind of really grounding?
Yeah, I suppose there is. Yeah, it is grounding. I mean, it kind of depends what kind of person you are, because some people really don't like to get mucky. But then I always have been. I mean, I'll come home from digging and wash my hands and then go into the garden and garden. Just put different mud on my hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the whole thing's really grounding. And then I think one of the other things about archaeology, which like I do a lot of workshops as well that are really aimed at making archaeology more accessible for people, because again, I think sometimes in archaeology we can be on a bit of a high horse, and I think that that's unnecessary. I think archaeology is for everyone, and everyone should feel comfortable in accessing it. They should feel included and involved, and like it's easy to get engaged and it's easy to understand. I don't think we should be publishing papers with these ridiculously long words that it's hard to access. Like I think it should be very much for the people. and that's really like the origin of archaeology, especially commercial archaeology. It is very like for the people kind of thing. But I think there's also like beyond just connecting with your heritage, there's a mindset that you can gain from engaging with archaeology that is very mindful, because it's being aware of how the landscape changes and how we as human beings change with the landscape and with the world that we live in, how we rely on the world that we live in, how we interact with objects, past and present, right? And there's a lot in that I think is very mindful in its essence, because it's thinking kind of outside of yourself and thinking about the world as a collective and how everything connects to each other, how everything is entangled, and how we relate to each other as human beings, and how we relate to objects and animals and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of like empathy and compassion that you can gain from looking at things through a bit more of an archaeological lens. It's something that we try and do with these workshops. Is like, it's not just about introducing people to archaeology, it's also introducing people to these concepts that can take you outside of yourself, if that makes any sense, to see the world a bit differently.
Yes, I think there's something that you're really talking there about what we would talk about in meditation and Buddhism, about kind of oneness, interconnectedness, that we're all part of one big thing. But just, I wondered if you'd say something about it's like the long view, isn't it? Your perspective of time is very different. You know, it's not just about the fast pace of now. You're kind of, you know, looking back over like hundreds, thousands of years and getting a sense of humans moving through time in that way.
Yeah, completely. Like, you're thinking about the whole of human history and how we're evolved and how we've socially evolved and how we've culturally evolved. And, you know, I think in the modern day as well, it's really easy to completely believe, I guess, like the ontology that you've been brought up with, you know?
You say more about what ontology means?
So it's basically like your worldview,
Yeah.
right? So if you've grown up in like a Christian country, then you're probably going to have a very like Christian ontology, a Christian worldview. And the same is true for like anything, you know, like culturally, or, you know, what your family do specifically, or like different places even in the same country. And I think like as an archaeologist, because so much of your time is spent studying how other people behave and how people from the past behave, it kind of opens this door, is how I see it, to beyond your ontology, to be able to understand we've all got our own worldview, we've all got our own like unique experience of the world, and it changes throughout time. You know, like if I go to the top of a hill, you can see it from the perspective of like everyone throughout time, right? You can think, oh, if I was a Mesolithic person, this is going to be a great vantage point for looking for aurochs, seeing what resources I have in the landscape, seeing what trees are growing and stuff like that. But then, you know, as a modern day person, oh, this is going to be a great picture for Instagram. Like, there's so many different ways through time people are experiencing and interacting with the world around them. And I think as an archaeologist, you kind of open the door to viewing all of them, because you kind of have to, because actually as an archaeologist, I think you're always learning, because to understand how humans have behaved throughout all of time, you have to know more information than any human being ever actually could. So I think a lot of archaeology is also being humble and being happy to always learn new things.
Yeah, because it seems to me that you've got to like really understand your own worldview and sort of set that to one side in order to be able to kind of step into the shoes of, you know, somebody who had a completely separate worldview, because your understanding of their context, you know, will always to some extent be informed by your own worldview. But the more you know about your own worldview, the more you can set that to one side.
Yeah, completely. Which is just being present, really, I guess, in like mindfulness, right?
And letting go of your preconceptions. Yeah.
And, you know, oh God, there'll be like controversy, because it's all controversial in archaeology and academia, because I think that it's completely fine to interpret the way that people behaved in the past. But a lot of people would be like, oh, you can never put your own biases aside enough to interpret it properly. Yes, okay, that's true, we know that, but you can still go, okay, well, a Mesolithic person might think this way, or, you know, a Iron Age person might think and feel this way about these things.
Well, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings,
Exactly.
and with the same kind of hard wiring, at least.
And I think people forget that about the past. Like, there's so many arguments about that in archaeology, but I mean, my take is, at the end of the day, I think we're all still people, and we all still like love and feel inherently, right? And like, obviously, people from different time periods are influenced by different things and understand the world differently, but at the end of the day, like you say, we're all just human.
Yeah, we all want to be happy, we all want to love, we all experience that anxiety, sadness, anger. So there's those things that we experience here, but the people from the past will also have had those experiences too.
Like, you have to assume so, but again, like, because it's emotion, there's no like hard evidence for that.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's safe to assume that people in the past experienced emotions like we do.
Yeah. And then I suppose you can get a sense of that from the cultural items that were around.
Yeah.
So just to end, there's two questions I think that people want to know. First is, what's the best thing that you ever found?
I get this question so much. I think it's such a funny question. Because I think like so much of archaeology is about, like, just to finish what we were saying before, is about like everyday people, right? And what everyday life was like. I think, leave the kings and the queens to the historians and give me the peasants and like the everyday folk, right? I get this question a lot, and I think people want me to be like, oh, I found a sword or whatever.
You found a gold necklace once, didn't you?
I found a bit of trim from a curtain that was gold. No, there's two things that I found that have been, I think, magnificent. And the first one is that I was digging on a Norman castle in Hereford, and I found a silver cross penny, 14th century. But because it was silver, right, and it had been buried in the ground, it came out silver, but it had been buried, right, so it couldn't oxidize. So as soon as it came out, it started oxidizing, and in my palm, like in front of my eyes, it turned purple, and that was really cool. Just the like science of it and stuff, and just watching this penny change color and being like, whoa, this is a magic penny. That was really cool. We were one penny off a hoard when we found that.
Oh, wow.
Which is a really fun way of saying we almost found 3 pennies, but we only found 2. It sounds really dramatic when I'm like a hoard. And then the second thing that is one of my favorite things that I found, and this is just because of the story that it like brings to mind. We were digging a medieval manor house near Preston. And it was moated, it had a huge moat around it. And the thing about moats is they're really, really good at what they do. So when you excavate a moat, it turns back into a moat, which isn't great fun for when you're digging. But we had sort of the bridge. Well, we had the foundations of the bridge, right? This is obviously the actual wooden bridge had like fallen into the moat and rotted, but we had the foundation of the bridge, so we knew where the bridge was. And pretty much like right next to the bridge, in the bottom of the moat, I found a snapped key, like an old iron key that had been snapped. And I was just like, isn't that so evocative of someone has like done something wrong or misbehaved or fallen out, and they've been cast out of the manor and their key's been snapped. And you're not welcome back here, and it's thrown off the bridge into the moat. And like God knows how that key got there. But I just think that I love finding stuff that is really like evocative of a story, of like a human story, right? And things like that. Yeah.
So talking about that, you showed me some artifacts this morning, which were just amazing. One was a little bit of flint with a little kind of, what you call it, like a screw on the end of it.
A drill.
A drill, that's it, a drill. So it was used to drill leather. And you could put your thumb where the person would put their thumb. And that was just like extraordinary. And then you also showed me a bit of pottery, which looked like just like a bit of crap masonry, but you said, oh no, this is a pot, and if you put your thumb here, you put your thumb in a Roman's thumbprint. And I mean, that's, like, it's so evocative. It's like really magical to do that. So kind of, and you know, revealing all these things that, you know, other human hands have handled over the years. It's an amazing
It's
job.
amazing, isn't it? I love handing people. Because I use that bit of it's briquetage. It's from salt making.
Yeah.
So people would have just like made this little. It's like a little lump of, we call it ceramic building material, clay, that someone's like made a little lump of and put it in so that you can rest like a bowl on it or something, so that you can heat up salt water over a fire and take the water out and have salt. So Roman salt making is Roman. But I love handing people that artifact because I show them all of these beautiful pieces of Roman pottery, and then I'm like, have a look at that, and then like a lot of people just like go, oh, okay, and put it down, and then I'm like, no, look closer, and as soon as people see the thumbprint, because it's amazing, it's so amazing. Like I think sometimes as an archaeologist,
2,000 years old,
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes as an archaeologist, you can get like a bit desensitized to how amazing it is. Like you're the first person. Like we found a like 4,000-year-old piece of flint tool, like someone's knife. You're the first person to touch that.
Yeah.
4,000 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think the same for the briquetage, which is what that little lump of clay is called. Being able to put your thumb into where a Roman person's thumb was is just, I think that's magical.
Yeah, that's
what I do.
It sort of connects you with the past, I think.
Right, in a really visceral way.
Yeah, really visceral way. And then my final question is, what do you like most about community archaeology, which is what really this podcast episode's been about?
Yeah. There's so much to like about it. I do a lot of work in commercial archaeology, which is great, but I think you kind of forget what the purpose of archaeology is. So I think my favourite thing about community archaeology is connecting people to their past, but also that moment where someone goes, oh, I can't do this, where they don't have the confidence to do it. And that usually is when you get them to do technical drawings. They go, I can't do this. And it's the moment where they go, I can't do this. And I go, well, you can and you will. And then they do. And it's that moment where they're like, ah. Oh.
So you're empowering people as well as connecting them with their past.
Giving people the confidence. Because again, as I say, I think it's very easy for people to feel like archaeology is for very clever people or people with lots of degrees and stuff like that. And it's just not the case. And I think that narrative makes it inaccessible. And I really, really want people to feel confident that they can do this stuff. You're just going to give it a try, right?
And if somebody wanted to get involved with some community archaeology close to them, is there a way that they could find that out? Or would it be through the local council? Or
the best thing to do is find out who your local archaeology community group is.
Okay.
Because they're the people that will probably be going for funding to get community projects and stuff. As far as I'm aware, there isn't a website that just lists community projects, but start with your local archaeology group. Send them an email. Because even if they've not got a dig running, they will know someone with a dig running somewhere.
Brilliant. Thanks, Janine. This has been a fabulous conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And so we'll maybe do another podcast in a future episode. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. That would be great.
So, we'll be back with another episode of the podcast very soon.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's brilliant. It's really lovely to talk to you about this.